Welcome back into the Mid-Norfolk cottage garden, and in this little video we're going to show you our globe artichokes. And growing globe artichokes is one of the great pleasures. They're, in my opinion, one of the ultimate summer finger foods. No real substance, but the pleasure of growing them, cutting them from your own garden, boiling them and then eating them with a selection of good dips is one of the great culinary treats, seasonal treats of summer. And we were intending to grow a row of 4 or 5 globe artichokes in this position. These are at the back of our vegetable garden in a row between the raspberries and the rhubarb, some of which the forces you can still see in place. But actually what we've ended up with in this row is 2 ornamental flowering artichokes or cardoons, and 1, 2, 3 artichokes which are actually producing edible flowers. And the difference is these multi-headed large varieties, which are so splendid and will give an absolutely beautiful flower display in a week or so when these burst open, don't really produce a size and a flower bud to be of any use. What you're actually wanting to produce is a primary flower bud on a stem such as this one. This is still on the small side. The ones that we've harvested from this plant, the main buds were cut off here and here last weekend for use, and they were about twice this size. Now they will increase in size slightly, but if you leave them too long they'll just brown and get extremely tough. So your primary harvest is off those 2 large buds on the stems, and then you will get a secondary picking of smaller globe artichokes slightly later in the season. So one of the important things to realise is that the production volumes of these plants is totally dependent on the number of good shoots you've got coming from the basal crown. And to keep a good healthy basal crown even in southern England is a little on the tricky side. These plants tend to be pretty frost sensitive and tender. It's very easy to lose them, so what we tend to do is draw a mulch up around these. We don't actually cover the crowns, which stay green and growing throughout the winter season, and then to reproduce them you will quite often see some side shoots coming away from the base of these plants, which will tear away quite easily or be lifted with a fork or spade with some root on. And this is an example of a plant that was moved last year and put in place from such a side shoot. And you'll see, if I come down to the base, what we're talking about, you'll see on the left the primary plant growing away with that shoot, and just to the right hand side this little bit here which could be divided and planted on as a new plant. And that's the way of dividing these once you get a good plant that gives you good flower buds. And they are quite variable in the type and size of flower buds that they produce, and the shape of the flower buds alters. This is the typical sort of looking globe artichoke that you probably buy from a grocer's for use, and a good plant like that with this purple discoloration that holds its flower bud for a good period of time and forms good volume flower buds is worth reproducing by this division method. If you're growing these from seed, then you are going to get quite a bit of variation, and if you're buying them from garden centres, as we did with these, labelled as globe artichokes, then you may end up with something that is very ornamental and certainly structurally very impressive, but doesn't really produce much in the way of edible globe artichokes.